Imagine a global network that has to agree on time, but there's no central clock. I mean, how does that even work? Well, today we're going to dive into a really clever solution from the Kaspas network called the DAA Score. It's basically a system that creates its own internal sense of time. Let's get right into it. So let's start with the big question, the fundamental problem. You've got thousands of computers scattered all over the world, all trying to work together. How on earth do they agree on the exact same time, down to the second, without a single trusted source they can all look at? This is a huge challenge in any decentralized system. You know, with a traditional blockchain, time is pretty straightforward. It's just a single straight line of blocks, one after another. But Kaspas uses a block DAG. Here, blocks get created in parallel, forming this complex, messy web instead of a neat line. And this is where our normal everyday idea of time just completely falls apart. Yeah, this whole thing creates what you could call the parallel block puzzle. And it's exactly why a normal stopwatch just won't cut it for a network like Kaspas. So the heart of the problem is this. In a block DAG, you can literally have multiple blocks being created at the exact same moment. If you're just relying on timestamps, well, which one came first? Which one is the real one to follow? All of a sudden, simple timestamps become totally unreliable, and they even become a way for miners to potentially manipulate the system. This leads us to what's called the DAG dilemma, and it really breaks down into three critical issues. First, there's timing ambiguity, which means the nodes just can't agree on when to adjust the mining difficulty. Then you have window selection complexity. It gets super hard to figure out which recent blocks you should even be looking at. And the most dangerous one? Consensus breaks. If nodes disagree, they could literally split the network right in two. Not good. So how do you solve a problem where time itself is the issue? Well, what if you stopped counting seconds and you start counting blocks instead? And that brings us right to our solution. Let's talk about the DAA score. So, what is this thing? Simply put, the DAA score is a running total. It's a cumulative counter. Each block score is just the total number of special DAA-eligible blocks in its entire history. So instead of measuring time in seconds or minutes, the network measures its progress in blocks. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, and the nuance is key. The DAA score uses that block count to decide when it's time to adjust the network's mining difficulty. But, and this is the clever part, it still uses the old-fashioned timestamps from those blocks to figure out how much to adjust it by. It neatly separates the when from the how, and that's the real innovation here. But wait, that raises a pretty important question, right? How does the DAA score know which blocks are eligible to be counted in the first place? Because not every block gets included. This brings us to the next piece of the puzzle, the mechanism behind the magic, something called the blue score. Think about it like this. The DAA score is our main clock, right? But it needs a filter to make sure it's only looking at recent relevant stuff happening on the network. It needs to know which blocks are in the window of what matters right now. And that filter, well, that's the blue score. And here's how it actually works. The network calculates a blue score threshold. It takes a block's blue score, which is basically a measure of how well connected it is, and then subtracts the difficulty window size. And just with that simple bit of math, it creates this dynamic, sliding window of relevant blocks, all without ever having to look at a clock. So this threshold, it creates this really clear dividing line. Any block with a blue score above the threshold is considered DA eligible, and it gets counted towards the network's clock. Anything below it, it's just ignored for this calculation. It's a super elegant way to make sure that as the network moves forward, old or less important blocks just naturally fall out of the picture. So the whole process is really just a clean four-step calculation. First, the network figures out that blue score threshold. Second, it identifies any blocks below it and basically just tosses them aside. Third, it counts up all the good ones that are left, the eligible blocks. And finally, it adds that count to the DAA score of its parent block. Simple as that. Let's make this super concrete so it really sticks. Imagine a parent block has a DAA score of, say, 1,000. The network then finds 5 brand new blocks that are all above that blue score threshold. Well, the new block's DAA score is simply 1,000 plus 5, which is 1,005. It's just a continuous running total. Okay, so we've covered the what and the how. Now let's get to the most important part. Why does any of this actually matter? What's the real-world impact? Let's dive into our final section. And the impact is huge. First off, it gives you consistent block times. The network can automatically adapt to big swings in mining power,
which keeps block production nice and predictable. Second, it's super resistant to time manipulation. Miners can't cheat by faking their timestamps because the whole system is based on block counts, not what their computer's clock says. And third, it's a truly decentralized way of keeping time. All the nodes can agree on the network's time without any help from the outside world.
And this is not just about mining difficulty. DAA Score has some really clever practical uses. It can be used for transaction lock times. So imagine a digital contract that only unlocks after a certain number of blocks have passed, like after the DAA Score grows by 10,000. It also works as a fantastic indicator of network health. If that score is climbing steadily, you know you have a healthy active system.
All right, let's tie this all together real quick. The DAA score is the network's internal clock. It measures progress not in seconds, but in blocks. The blue score is its smart filter, making sure only recent, important blocks tick that clock forward. And this elegant combo lets a super complex network agree on time, keeps it stable, secure, and even opens the door to totally new applications. By completely replacing wall clock time with an internal metric that's driven by consensus, Kaspas really has solved a fundamental problem. So the question I want to leave you with is this. If a network can create its own internal sense of time, what other incredible possibilities does that unlock for the future of all these decentralized systems?